So today we'll be looking at a somewhat low spending option to using Childe. So up until now, the talk has always been around Skyward Harp being the best in slot bow, which is a 5-star bow, which is not accessible for everyone. So people have been saying that if you can't get Skyward Harp, the best second option would be Rust. I'm going to be talking today about another option in the Battle Pass bow called the Viridescent Hunt, which could be a really good bow to use on Childe. The reason I'm addressing the topic is really just because I haven't heard any talk about the Battle Pass bow as a legitimate option for Childe, and it is a really good weapon that has a lot of functionality, good stats, good utility, and it suits Childe's playstyle quite well. So I'll be addressing all these topics and explaining why I think it might even be better than the Skyward Harp on Childe specifically. Now, moving on to the first thing I wanted to talk about, it's actually the stats for both weapons here, both meaning the Skyward Harp and the Battle Pass bow. I did also mention the Rust being a viable option, and it is. The only thing is that I won't be talking about it now, just because as Childe being a main DPS, I do think that having crit rate as a main stat is much better than just having a raw attack percent. So that's why I'll be leaving it out of the picture here. I'll just be comparing the 5-star to the 4-star option. Now, if we look at on the screen here, we have the stats for the Skyward Harp. Now, 5 stars, just as a general rule, have undeniably higher stats than 4-star weapons, and the Skyward Harp here is no exception, with a base attack of 674 and a crit rate of 22.1%. So those stats are good, and it's backed up by a good effect here, so the passive being the increased crit damage with a percent chance of having a small AoE attack. Now, I did put these stats to level 90 here because in the long run, we'll all have 90 weapons. That's not really gated by either cost or anything like that. It's really just moving up in AR. So I put the weapons to 90. I did leave the 5-star one at Refinement 1, and just for argument's sake and for the sake of being fair, I'll leave the 4-star one at Refinement 1 as well. And as we can see here, the Skyward Harp stats are undeniably good. Now, moving on to the Battle Pass bow here. Again, I did put it at 90, and there is quite a drop off in base attack, falling down to 510, but the crit rate stat is actually a bit higher at 27.6%. So in a way, you're actually trading base attack for crit rate here, which is not the end of the world, especially since, as I mentioned before, 5-star weapons almost always have much better stats than their 4-star counterparts. Now, the main thing that I like about the Battle Pass bow, other than the crit rate main stat being great, is actually the fact that the Verdant Wind passive here actually works great with Childe as a whole. I'll be going into that in a second, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that these stats, especially in these two bows specifically, so these are kind of like an exception case where these stats are not drastically leaning in the favor of the 5-star weapon, so this is one of those few cases where they're somewhat close. So if we move on to the passive itself, we can see that what Verdant Wind does is when you hit a normal or an aim shot, it has a 50% chance of generating a slug cone. It will basically create a type of swirl which continuously brings in the enemies to the center. It will also deal a little bit of AoE damage, which is a plus, but the main utility for Childe's kit will be the actual fact that all the enemies will start to clump one on top of the other and allow us to hit multiple at a time. The fact that Childe becomes into a short-ranged melee character, you can slash and do AoE damage, and that's where the clumped up enemies comes in. So now we've gone into Musgrave to do a little bit of testing here. We'll just be showing the utility of the Cyclone in a really clumped up group of mobs here. So what we can see is the Cyclone will bring them all in, and right now with the slashes that Childe's doing in his E form, he's actually triggering so many procs of damage that you can't even see what each individual instance of damage is. Just from what my damage usually is, each proc is about 2 or 3k. So as you can see right now, I'm hitting 2 slimes, but at the beginning I was hitting the 3 slimes and also 2 or 3 of the hilichurls. So that's 5, even 6 characters. So at 3k apiece, that goes from 3k damage quickly multiplied by 6, it brings to 18k damage per auto attack. So this AoE really does a lot to increase Childe's AoE damage, and that's really where the utility comes in. You could also see in this clip that I always run Childe with Fischl, and even in all my other footage that I run in my main 4 roster, I have both Childe and Fischl. It's the Electro Charge combo that I run. And with that, you can do a ton of damage. Things rarely ever survive through that combo. So although I only have Child at C0, and with it does have quite a long E cooldown, since things don't really survive that long, it's never really an issue. So running that combo along with the Verdant Wind passive kind of just allows you to bypass Child's main weakness, which is actually his long E cooldown. Now, moving on to another Abyss demonstration here, I will be utilizing the Rust as opposed to the Battle Pass bow, and I wanted to show a bow without the Verdant Wind passive. The reason I'm not using Skyward Harp is actually because I never rolled for it, simply because at the time I got the Battle Pass bow and saw that it was a better bow in my opinion, so I just never rolled for it. The concept is the same, so as we just saw there, when Child hit away the mobs towards the end of his combo, he actually slashed them away from him, so the combo is so strong that it's actually pushing the mobs away, which actually goes against what Child actually wants to do. So as he's pushing them away, as we can see here, I'm actually stuck doing solo character damage here as opposed to the continuous AoE that we were putting out before. Just the way the nature of the kit is such that you will do a lot of AoE damage regardless. You're just doing much more, in my opinion, with the Battle Pass bow, continuously hitting 5-6 characters, or at certain points in time, all the characters that are on the field in certain floors of Musgrave, as opposed to here where I was stuck doing a lot of single or double target damage. Um, the AoE damage is still good in that case, but far better in the case of the Battle Pass bow, in my opinion. Now, having said all these good things about the Battle Pass bow, even saying that I think on Child specifically it is even better than the Skyward Harp, I would say that overall, the 5-star Skyward Harp is a more well-rounded and overall good bow than the Battle Pass bow, simply because, again, in my opinion, the Battle Pass bow itself, although absolutely broken on Child, I think it's actually pretty bad on other archers. So if I did try it at one point on Fischl, and since she doesn't do a lot of AoE damage and a lot of archers don't, it was actually kind of underwhelming. So besides Child, who switches to the hack and slash kind of melee stance playstyle, the other archers don't and do a lot of single target damage, so the Battle Pass bow is quite bad. The Skyward Harp is a more well-rounded, I guess overall good bow for many archers, although I do think it gets outclassed specifically by the Battle Pass bow on Child.